All right, good afternoon, everyone. Now that it's 12:01 here in Texas, I can say good afternoon. Thank you all for being here and taking the time out of your busy days to hop on this webinar with us. We're super excited for the next 45 minutes ahead, and we hope that you'll find this content to be super insightful and applicable for you and your communities. Quick intro, my name is Michael Blodgett, and I am the Director of Demand Generation here at One Day. I've been on the One Day team for almost 2 years now, and I'm so grateful to be part of the senior living industry. I'll be moderating this panel with some of the most innovative sales and marketing leaders in the senior living space. So I'm super honored to be joined by this amazing and fun group here. So we'll get into intros in just a second. In this webinar, we're going to walk through common challenges facing senior living sales and marketing teams, best practices for communication and collaboration, the role of technology in sales and marketing success, and last of all, some actionable steps for building out and executing your strategy. So before we dive in, just a couple housekeeping items. Yes, this webinar is being recorded. Don't worry, we'll have a recording of it in your inbox by the end of the day, I promise. Number two, you can use the chat for anything you like. If you have a question, we have a One Day team member in there to answer. If you'd like to share your own insight or maybe some thoughts along the way, it is definitely encouraged. So feel free to make it noisy in there. Lastly, time permitting, we'll have a few minutes at the end to answer any additional questions. So let's jump into introductions. I'll ask all of my panelists to go ahead and come show their cameras and we can greet everyone here. Awesome. We're going to start out with Christy Ballard. So Christy serves as the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Solstice Senior Living, which we're so grateful to work with as a partner of One Day. She's an accomplished and seasoned professional with a comprehensive background in programming, leadership, sales and marketing, and business development. So prior to joining Solstice in 2018, she led teams at Trilogy, at Atria, and she was also involved with RealPage Incorporated and several of their subsidiaries. So welcome, Christy. We're so glad that you're here today.
Thank you.
Awesome. And next we have Julie Podowitz. So Julie is an expert trainer, an amazing speaker, and just really a sales coach who focuses on driving results. So she works currently as a senior living sales and marketing consultant with her firm, Grow Your Occupancy, really helping sales and executive teams to improve their closing conversions, their activity levels, and overall driving census and revenue. So prior to starting GYO, Julie has extensive experience at multiple senior living orgs, Elder Care Alliance, Senior Star, Traditions, and most recently at Vitality Senior Living. So welcome, Julie. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks, Michael. Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, so last but not least, we have our very own Lacey Jungman. Lacey joined the One Day team last year as our VP of Strategic Development. Prior to One Day, she led the sales and marketing efforts at Heritage Communities, driving occupancy revenue, sales strategies, brand management. Just pretty much everything sales and marketing fell under her. So she brings more than 15 years of experience to from the senior living space. She's really become a trusted advisor and veteran in the industry. So she's also a talented writer, contributes to some blogs and our gym, several other things. And she also regularly shares her insights on LinkedIn. So side note, last week I had a competition with Lacey to see which one of us could get more likes on our LinkedIn post. I'll let y'all guess in the comments who won that. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, Christy, come on, Christy. Christy said Lacey won. I think you're right, Christy. The final score was, I think, 120 to 80, so it wasn't really that close. So anyway.
Not too bad, not too bad.
Lacey, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Good deal, y'all. Well, I'm so happy we have this crew together to present today. You may have noticed I'm not sharing my screen anymore. There's not a slideshow in front of you, and that's on purpose. That's because this webinar is going to be a panel style, jumping into a handful of topics, fielding some questions along the way. And our goal really is to really discuss and dissect a topic that's top of mind for all of you here. And that's the goal of ensuring that your efforts are aligned across your sales and marketing motions, your sales and marketing functions. So I realize every organization is going to be set up differently. Some have your department siloed with specific sales teams and marketing teams. Others may be combined and report to the same leader. Some of you may even outsource some of your marketing or sales efforts. So no matter what your organizational structure is, I guarantee you'll find some valuable takeaways in today's conversation. With that being said, just a quick temperature check for the crowd. Pull up the chat box and I'm going to ask you to type in, drop the number 1 in the chat if you're in a sales focused role. So number 1 if you're in sales. If you're in a marketing focused role, drop a 2 in there. And don't worry, if you have a hybrid role, put a 3. So if you're doing a mixture of both. And then don't want to leave anyone out. If you're joining us from another department, whether it's operations, resident activities, human resources, just type it out and send it in, and I promise we'll have some insights that are applicable for you too. So I've been talking a lot. Let's get into it today. By the way, it looks like we have a solid mix of everyone, so which is exactly what we were hoping for. So let's get started. Before we get to the good, let's kind of take a look at the bad and the ugly first. So we're going to start with the challenge that we're facing today. So I think we're going to jump in straight with Christy. And Christy, could you share an experience that you've had where your sales and marketing efforts that you're a part of were kind of felt out of alignment, and how did you handle that?
Absolutely. So Solstice Senior Living started November 1st of 2017, and I was recruited in 2018 for that very reason, to align sales and marketing. So I would just share the two top things that helped the most in getting things in alignment. Is one, I needed to be honest with myself about where I was strong and where I was weak. So my experience is in sales primarily. So I leaned on previous coworkers, vendors that were a huge help in getting me ramped up in my knowledge base. Then I'd say second is getting all the players together to strategize. The vendors, our marketing department is not internal, it's external. So getting everybody on a call, which they weren't very familiar with. Everyone was a little suspicious in the beginning, sharing information and data. But you know what? After a while, everyone got in their groove, started to trust each other, and it just became a regular meeting once a month that we planned on. And that took our sales and marketing to a whole nother level. So I would strongly encourage, we are so quick to plan those meetings when it's internal, when it's another coworker, but we need to plan those meetings and get all of our vendors together on one call to understand how we're complementing each other's services and how we need to work together to achieve a common goal.
I love that. That's a great idea. I haven't thought of it from that way before. So thank you, Christy. Julie, we're going to pass the mic to you.
Sure. I saw a lot of ones, twos, threes, like you said, Michael, mix. So sales and marketing are two different things, right? And they require two different skill sets. And I saw lots of threes. So there's people out there responsible for both and potentially even doing both. Because they're two very separate skill sets, I can completely understand, and I've been involved in organizations where they are sales department, marketing department, and they're separated. Chrissy, like you said, you lean, we all of us lean toward one way, kind of like heavier in sales, heavier in marketing.
Right.
The greatest challenge when it's separated, okay? The positive is you're great at sales, I'm great at marketing, right? That's the positive. And then the challenge that I experienced anyway, a few years back, was the complete disconnect. So the marketing department was doing their thing, sales doing its thing, and the complete breakdown of communication communication of what's happening, right? So there was a lack of alignment. And kind of piggybacking maybe, Christy, on what you were saying, that's, I think, what we're talking about now, right? We understand that it's two separate things, whether one person is covering both, two separate disciplines, really need to align to the goal. So that's the challenge that I experienced, and it was glaring.
Right on. All right, Lacey, what do you got?
I love that. I agree with both of these ladies here today. I'm going to take it a little bit more granular though, and in my example. And if you've ever heard me speak, you know that I am a fan of sharing with you when I have misses. I think we learn from one another's opportunities of failures and as successes, and every failure is just a step towards doing better in the future. And so I'm going to share actually a few different misses with you here throughout the course of this webinar, but I don't think that there's any greater example of a challenge and a missed opportunity between sales and marketing as a girlfriend of mine in the industry had painted the picture for me. She and I had worked together, but in her previous role, she was at the community level. The corporate office had one particular name and her community had another name. If you were to put both of those logos side by side and compare them, you would have no idea that both of those organizations, right, the corporate office and the community level, were tied together. And there's a very distinct and reasonable strategy for that. And it can be, when executed well, can be very beneficial to the organization. But in this particular example, the home office or corporate office had spent an exorbitant amount of money to make sure that this collateral, they were pushing out a new promotion company-wide. This collateral was consistent. It looked beautiful. The imagery was just very thoughtful. The type font was clean and easy to read, and everything looked great. Once my friend at her community received her collateral items for this promo and this push, she recognized that it was the corporate office name on this flyer and on these items of collateral, not her community name. So they knew this big push was coming, but there was a missed opportunity for connection and communication. And when she and her team received all of this collateral, which were probably hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000 or more, which that community got billed for, their team had to throw that stuff in the trash because her sales team said, I can't use this. Nobody in our market knows us as the corporate office name. They know us by our community level name. And so it's not useful for us. And that to me is a glaring example of how from the home office to the community level and from marketing to sales, there is opportunity to grow and improve in our communication and how we work together.
Great stuff, Lacey. Love those stories. Real quick before we continue, I want us to have this just quickly share how our organizations are currently structured, and Lacey, your and Julie's cases, how previous organizations you're at were structured. So just to give our friends in the audience just a clear reference point for the rest of the conversation moving forward. So Christy, would you mind sharing how your sales and marketing team is structured currently?
Sure. Here at Solstice Senior Living, we have our sales reporting up to operations, and that does include our regional directors of sales and marketing. And then we have sales support team members like the traveling sales specialist. And then we have senior living specialists, which are actually remote at-home positions calling new leads. And they all report directly to me. And that's how that's set up in the sales department. The marketing department is external, as I mentioned earlier. We have outside vendors.
Gotcha. Good deal. All right. Lacey, would you mind sharing what your setup was in previous roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it was kind of the unicorn of all, right? It was sales and marketing and communications under one umbrella, of which I was able to lead the charge at my previous organization. And I really enjoyed that. I think it did allow for better dialogue between the two departments initially. But as the pandemic came to be a realization and a reality in our world, I spent more time working with recruitment, trying to figure out how do we help support our our staffing shortages through marketing innovation and communication. And so I was spending more time on that marketing, communication, PR aspect of things. So we trialed what Christy was talking about in one of our regions, where the regional sales support went directly to the regional directors of operations, who then reported to the COO. And I was no longer that dotted line sales support for that region. And quite honestly, that did well for us. And we emulated that in other regions as well through our portfolio. Because what happened then was operations no longer felt like, well, I can't touch that, because sales is over here and I'm only over operations. And not only because that's a big chunk, but now operations then was enabled and empowered to be able to move quickly and support the revenue front as well. So it increased the opportunity for a wedge perhaps between marketing and sales, because sales was no longer under one umbrella. It was now over with operations. But that just forced us to work harder and communicate better and more succinct in order to see change.
Good stuff, Lacey. Julie, would you like to share?
Sure. Vitality Living. I currently act as CFO there. It's one department as far as sales and marketing from the support office. We have recently elevated, very justly so, Amanda to head up marketing. I head up sales, and then with the regional sales teams. And for marketing, Vitality does also lean into experts, right, for the digital and vendors or solution providers from a marketing expertise standpoint, SEO and writers and things like that. And then other organizations that I work with, it really is a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag, but I think the typical, if you will, is that it's kind of one department, maybe like Lacey, where the Lacey's of the world kind of oversee it all, but then individuals, maybe, department heads over the marketing and then over the sales.
Gotcha. Super helpful, y'all. Well, let's get super fundamental and so maybe stop thinking about the department everyone's in, stop thinking about who you may report to or what your job title is, and let's just stop and consider, like, at a basic level, there is, like Julie said, a difference between marketing and sales. The way I define that is sales, the goal is to convert a prospect right now. And for marketing, the goal is to educate and build your brand so that a potential resident or adult child thinks well about you and considers you when the need arises. So for sales and marketing efforts to work together in harmony, there needs to be a unified approach and strategy. So I know there are differing opinions. That's just my hot take, but let's open it up to the panel. So when you're putting together your marketing strategy, what are you really building your strategy on? And what steps do you have in place to ensure that it's aligned well with your sales strategy? So I'd like to turn this one over to Lacey first.
Yeah, I love this. And I love that everybody on this panel has recognized that there's two different mindsets that we're talking about. Sales is wired very different than marketing is. And that's great. That's why they can work very well together. And I think the new term is smarketing. If you haven't heard that yet, it's like a thing. Michael's teaching me everything I need to know about, like, new up and coming words that I don't even know about. And so smarketing is something I hope I'm teaching him today. But with smarketing in mind, thinking about quarterly plans or yearly plans when it comes to your marketing strategies and how do they support your sales efforts. For me, it was a very robust, approach. It wasn't a one fell swoop that what we did last quarter, what we did last month is going to be emulated and it's going to be successful. What I found most successful for my teams was doing a quarterly plan. And in my previous organization, we would do what's called quarterly planning sessions, where all of the department heads got together, and this 4-hour meeting was led by a regional director of operations. And what happened throughout this quarterly planning session was every department head inside of that community, because every community had one of these every single quarter, identified what their goal and strategy was. We called them rocks, what their rocks were for the next upcoming quarter. That was a gold mine for me, because I knew right away if dining was going to be working on farm to table strategy, that's something I could work on with my marketing team, and we could push that out and support sales in their communication efforts, right? Or if I knew that life enrichment was going to turn over a couple assistants, or they were struggling getting a priest to come in and do mass or to give the Eucharist, then I was not going to be pushing that this quarter, right? So that dialogue of what they're planning on at the community level was critical to me creating my corporate office marketing plan and being in sync with the community level. And so, even beyond that, though, obviously the CRM is where we hold a lot of our data, right? We can easily see, is it a lead generation issue that we need to work on? And do we truly not have enough leads coming in? Or is it a lead nurture issue? And being able to dissect what the root issue was helpful, again, in creating what the marketing strategy was that supported sales. Obviously looking at your ROI on your marketing efforts as well and missed opportunities, but most important was talking to those inside of the community. Are they having a difficulty with some of their competitors? Do we need to overcome an issue with a competitor or reputation that we've never maybe been faced with before? Maybe we hurt somebody's feelings inside of the industry that we work with locally, and there's a bad name for ourselves. Do we have to justify or overcome that? And ultimately, at the end of the day, it was getting buy-in for what I wanted to do that was supportive of them, because even I could come up with a marketing plan that I thought was super cool, but at the end of the day, that rural market didn't find value in it, or they would not get behind the idea because of a variety of reasons. And so if I didn't have their buy-in, we were not going to be successful. So listening to what the folks in the field and at the community level are telling you is really the best way to create a winning strategy between the two different areas.
Great, great insights, Lacey. Appreciate that. Christy, going to pass the mic to you.
Okay, there'll be a lot of similarities here, but I'll try to share some things that might be a little different from what Lacey said. So on my end with the regionals, we work behind the scenes on all the things the communities don't want to have to work on that need to be in place, like digital and websites, reputation management, auto text campaigns, auto email campaigns, branding campaigns, market analysis, mystery shops, all of that kind of stuff we're doing behind the scenes. And we do explain it to the communities because they want to know why they can't spend that money. So, they have it in their budget, but the money is spent, right? So we have to explain to them what we're doing with it. And we need to keep them in the loop on the results from it so that we take that very seriously. We don't make it this big mystery like Oz behind the curtain. We try to be very transparent about, this is what we're doing with your money. This is the results from it. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we analyze that later. So, and then after we get that all worked out, because again, we have monthly meetings, we try to be very proactive and strategic. We take those strategies for the upcoming month and we apply it to their sales and marketing plan, which is on a shared drive that everybody has access to and can see in real time when changes are made or additions are completed. And we try to keep it very simple for the communities on their end. There's so many opportunities, everywhere to make improvements to get your conversion rates up, right? Inquiry to tour to move in, all of that. But we want to keep it simple and doable. And so we just ask them to simply add 2 to 3 priorities per month to the plan, okay? And it may be a new niche in the market, or it may be just something as simple as working on food presentation so that we can invite more people to come for tours and lunch. It basically falls into 3 categories, and it may have 3 strategies with 1 in each category, or all 3 might be in 1 bucket. It just depends, to Lacey's point, on the situation at the community and what is most important to them. Those 3 categories are lead traffic, and then we have lead advancement and professional referral development. So those 2 to 3 priorities are going to fall in at least 1 of those categories. And that's how we do it here at Solstice.
Great insight. Great insight. Julie, how would you wrap this one up for us?
I would say that in order to unify goals, you need to have them. You need to set them, understand what the expectations and the benchmarks are. And what are you going for? So simply put, marketing, is leads coming into to the top of the funnel, sales, we're bringing them through, and understands from a marketing standpoint, whether from the community level, support office level, whichever level, your job is to generate leads. And so from an outreach is sales, but outreach is the marketing, events, all that. And from digital, like I said, whichever level it is, it's lead gen. Right? So total number of leads, non-paid, non-aggregator. And then your salesperson, it's move-ins, right? And there's different components that go into cause and effect, right? So I would make it, I would just kind of wrap it up to say, you've got to set goals. You have to understand your benchmarks, your expectations, put the guardrails in place so you have something to measure against.
Great stuff. I mean, clearly, having the strategies aligned is vital for having success and even boosting morale. So even if you're operating in silos, it's like we've said, it's important to schedule regular meetings to track those shared goals, communicate about the workflow, the obstacles, and even the wins. So ensuring everyone has a voice when setting up these strategies seems to be very important when it comes to y'all's past experience and current experience. So speaking of having a voice, and a lot of what we touched on so far is talking about communication. So communication is so easy to discuss, yet so difficult to execute. So when it comes to the communication flow of your sales and marketing strategy that you just come up with, or specific initiatives from the corporate level to the regional or even individual community level, what are some of the best practices that you discovered, or even feel free to share a situational example or a success story? So Christy, I'm going to turn it over to you to lead this one off.
Well, with communication flow, I think it's just really important not to introduce too much all at once. So we're just very careful about coordinating. We have a master calendar where every department leader has access to see what is planned with any kind of company-wide initiatives or calls or Zoom meetings. And we just try to be very respectful of people's time and make sure that we're not double booking or putting too much on their plate in one week. And that in itself, I think, has made the biggest difference for us, is to just be very, very mindful of the community. They're getting pulled in all different directions, especially with the labor challenges that are out there right now. So they appreciate that we put so much thought into that. And then, like Lacey mentioned early on in the webinar, making sure with projects or special initiatives or things of that nature that we have representatives from the community that are a part of those committees to have a voice, to be able to listen to what we're thinking and what we're proposing, and to be able to have a voice to add their thoughts to it. So it's a very, collective idea sharing approach and a team approach.
100%. Lacey, would you like to add on to that?
Well, of course, I've never turned down an opportunity to talk, Michael. I was actually looking for the on the navigation bar where I could like heart something or love, as Christy was talking. I'm thinking that implementation calendar is critical. That helps so much to diffuse competing priorities and make sure that everybody's in alignment just across the company, regardless of sales and marketing. I mean, something like that is extremely helpful as you're rolling out new initiatives, to make sure that there's not an overburden and overzealous approach, perhaps, to just so many new initiatives. I forgot what your question was because I love that so much, but I am going to tell you a little bit about communication, because to her point, you can shoot yourself in the foot a little bit by communicating too much. My background is in PR and communication. And so on one hand, I think, well, you can never over communicate anything. But in this particular example, I do think that there is a risk of over communicating too much to the person that doesn't care as much necessarily. And I'll give you an example. Home office perhaps is in charge of making sure that the digital strategy is being executed and put together really swiftly. And what that means then for the sales team, right? They want to see a certain number of leads and the follow through and all of the shakeout from there. But does that salesperson in the community want a 2-hour dissertation on all of the efforts that you're doing for the digital strategy? Is that what they need to know? So I think it's just really, again, just like I said, go to your communities and find out what is happening inside of those communities so that you know how best to support them. The same is true with knowing your people. Some of our sales team wanted to know what we were doing from a digital strategy perspective, and some really just wanted the leads to come to them and really didn't care. And I was wasting their time by telling them too much, and that's okay if they don't need too much information. But if they want to know, make sure that you let them know. And I would also say make sure that everybody is working on the same KPIs. If you have a digital strategy and your benchmark for success is number of inquiries, but your sales team's benchmark of success is revenue and move-ins, there's going to be a disconnect, because your marketing team is going to say, hey, look at all these cool impressions. I'm doing my job. I've got all of these impressions, people are looking at my ads. This is amazing. And the sales team is saying, you ain't working for me, because these are not translating to leads and I can't do my job without them. And so what is the end goal is friction. I'm working really hard over here. No, you're not, because I'm not seeing good quality leads. And so at the end of the day, making sure that everybody knows that we're contributing to the same pool of knowledge. We are cascading up and down and left and right what we need. And that means that communities have to be vocal. If you are working with your home office team and you feel like there might be a disconnect, it is your responsibility inside of the community to vocalize that so your voice is heard, and it's okay to be the squeaky wheel. I remember I had a squeaky wheel. She was in one of my communities and I could not wait to promote her because she was the champion for her community. And I had misses. I was overlooking something that was important to her inside of that community. And so I say to those in the community level to be champions for your community and vocalize what you need. Make sure that that communication is two ways. Also, I would say if you're at the home office level, make sure that you're listening and that you're communicating the why, because sometimes where there may be friction at the community level with some of the strategies we may want to implement, it may just be a reason of explaining the why, right? Helping everybody to understand the reason why, or it may be we need an entire shift of our strategy, approach, and the measurables of which we're using.
Great stuff, Lacey. Julie, how about you wrap this one up for us?
Sure. And I hope you can hear me, mate. It says my internet is unstable. Communication's a huge topic, in and of itself. To pull a couple things from my fabulous panel colleagues, Christy and Lacey, and I take notes. As if you know me, you know, taking notes. Mindfulness, and then what problem you're going to try to solve, right? What problem you're trying to solve. So the communication is what is two buckets, like how do we communicate and what we communicate. So I would just say in communication, think about the how of how are we communicating? How do we show up, and lean in with curiosity, mindfulness. Christy, you were saying very mindful.
Julie, I think I might have lost you there. Okay, cool. Well, we're gonna, for the sake of time, hop over to the next question. So thanks. Oh, thanks y'all for sharing. So as y'all know, the depth of communication has consequences, whether positive or negative. So misalignment and miscommunication can negatively impact your bottom line. So
yeah. I'm sorry. Am I in? Oh shoot. Okay. I was just saying such brilliant things, but
oh, it's all good, Julie. Your pause for just a few seconds. So I
Darn it.
figured we can go ahead and move on to the next one. You can kind of filter that back into this next question. So according to a recent study, companies with properly aligned sales and marketing efforts generate 32% more revenue. So clearly misalignment can create an adverse effect on your NOI. And a vital piece of that alignment, like we've said before, is having those similar or shared goals. So what are some of the unifying goals that you track to align your sales and marketing efforts? So Julie, I'm going to throw this one back to you.
Okay. I'll hopefully you can hear me, or the words are that you can hear are helpful. So aligning, it is first to make sure that that you know what they are, right? And that we lean in with empathy, we lean in with curiosity. If your job is to generate leads, right, and mine is to get move-ins, or if your job is to do both, to really understand to really understand your business, to know your business. And if it does make sense that when sales and marketing are in alignment, whether it's one person or multiple people, that the goals, the end, everyone is in mind at the end goal. So maybe it isn't, for instance, the number of new leads coming into the funnel, but it's the quality, right? Or it's really looking at without emotion, look at the data. And, Michael, I know you're working really, really hard to drive leads, and we so appreciate it. But when we take a look at the leads coming in from this channel, 80% of them are not financially qualified. And you're not taking it emotionally, like you're not working hard or doing a good job. It's just, oh, okay, let's take a look at what needs to happen to shift the message or change, put the dollars in other places. So it's tough to wrap it up in short. I would say in communication, I forgot the question, but I would say alignment, aligning your whomever is involved to the end goal, keep emotion out of it as far as the data and the results, and keep emotion in it when we're leaning into communication, being very mindful, very empathetic, and lean in with curiosity instead of blame.
That's super insightful. Thank you, Julie. Christy, going to pass it over to you.
Okay. So this is more of a shared mindset to reach our shared goals approach. And the mindset is that at Solstice, we're trying to do everything we can, think through every possibility of how we can make it easier for our customers to travel through that senior living journey. So, part of it may take effect at the community level, but the other part is going to be behind the scenes once again from a marketing perspective. And so just to give you an example of that, we created a 5-book ebook series recently on our websites. We have the 3rd ebook posted. The 4th will go live on May 1st. And the thought process behind that is it's not heavily branded. We did not want to plaster Solstice all over it. We wanted to be able to have a downloadable file that we can share with people simply because we want to help them. So our employees can share that file with anyone, whether it's a prospect, another fellow employee, whoever may benefit from it. We can take it with outreach visits that we make with business professionals. We can even offer that to business professionals to use it on their mass emails and newsletters. They're always looking for content. And yes, it does help us online with our content as well. But that's one way that we've taken this shared vision of how can we help people that are having to make this sort of decision, and also tie it with sales and marketing together.
Great stuff. Lacey, how about you wrap it up for us here?
Yeah, to your point, Michael, there is an adverse effect on NOI when sales and marketing are not in alignment. And that is seen right by the high expense that we have when we have to scrap something that didn't work. And the first example that I gave when we first launched, right, this webinar, the example of having to throw away nearly $1,000 billed to that community of collateral that wasn't in alignment with what the community actually needed. And so circling back to your point, I think the way in which we prevent the adverse effect to NOI is communication. I mean, that's what I think that the whole entire topic of today's call is about, is communication, and really making sure we're working towards the same common goal, because revenue will suffer if we're not in alignment. Our expenses will suffer if we're not in alignment. And I just read that same statistic, the 32% higher ratio of revenue when sales and marketing are in alignment. So it's so funny that you should quote that. I guess we were both doing our research before this call today. So that's really good to know that you were doing yours too. But I think that if there's one takeaway that we have from this call today, it is how critical it is that we are all working towards the same common goal and identifying what that goal is and getting buy-in from everybody who's participating along that path. It will prevent that high expense of having to scrap a strategy after you've already implemented it. And so if I'm speaking to the home office, I'm saying get buy-in from your community leaders, your sales and marketing teams at the community level. And if you're at the community level, I'm saying to you, be loud, ask questions. This is your community too. Take ownership in this, and it's okay, because ultimately, both sides have passion in what they're doing, and we all want the same outcome, but define those, because if we don't define both the outcomes we're trying to achieve and the strategy in which we're trying to use, we will have a negative impact on NOI.
100%. Thanks, y'all. Great insights there. I know, for example, for the one-day team, one of the ways that we align our sales and marketing team is through tracking joint KPIs, primarily with pipeline and revenue. So our marketing team consistently tracks the amount of pipeline that's sourced for the sales team on behalf of the marketing team, as well as we have a quarterly goal for marketing sourced revenue. So at the end of the day, for us to justify our efforts, our resources, and our team size, we have to tie back our work to the bottom line. So honestly, none of that would be possible if we didn't have technology in place to assist with the tracking. So now that I mentioned tech, let's jump into our next question. So technology utilization can really play a huge role in your sales and marketing success. And the daunting fact is that it seems like there's an infinite number of tech tools that you can jam inside your team's toolbox. So let's consider, like, A, how do you prioritize what's most important? And B, how do you drive adoption effectively? So this leads into our next question. Christy, I'm going to pass it over to you. What advice would you give when it comes to making sure your teams are utilizing technology to its full potential?
So the focal point, the entire almost 4 years I've been here, is training and development, and especially when it involves technology. So, train your team members, and then go back and train them again, and then go back and train them again. And it's really important to I know we have all different roles present here on this call. So, if you're a support team member, it's really important for you to go back and take a look individually, each member of your team, and we call it a deep dive, look and see if they are grasping it. They may be grasping it, but not using it. That could be part of it. So being able to personalize your coaching calls, we're really big here about having pre-scheduled recurring coaching calls that people can plan their schedule around, and focusing on those specific areas that they need that support the most and personalize that time to them specifically. And that's really, I think, the key, because that takes a lot of time as a support team member to do that, to do those audits, so to speak. But it's really time well spent, because that's what's going to help the individual the most. Now, if you're at the community and you're having to be the person to embrace the new technology, I know that it's a lot, because, it wasn't that long ago I was a director of sales and marketing. I actually, when I got pregnant, decided to give up my regional job and go back to being a DSM of a 250 unit community. And I didn't have anyone helping me. So until it was time for me to go on maternity leave. Go figure. So, so basically my head was spinning, and they would try to introduce things to me. And I realized just feeling so incredibly overwhelmed. So I think at the community, what you have to keep in mind is that there is a greater good, or the company wouldn't invest in whatever they're trying to roll out. So, change is hard, especially when you don't have enough hours in the day to embrace it. But try to fit it in somehow. Look at your time management. Try to make a commitment to, learning enough to start using it consistently. And just like anything else, if you make a commitment and you block time to do something and you practice it, it will just become part of your routine. Eventually you'll get more and more comfortable with it, and it won't be such a big deal. But if you keep putting it off, it's like that dark cloud hanging over your head. So do yourself a favor and make that dark cloud go away, and just block some time and commit to it.
Good deal. Well, we're getting close on time, y'all. So let's we just have one more question after this, but let's try to get Julie and Lacey's answers in real fast. So Lacey, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I could not agree more with what Christy said. And I see by the chat also, everybody else feels that way. Being mindful of knowing that there's a new implementation and making sure that you feel comfortable with baby steps. I live and breathe by my calendar, and I know in the community level, it's much harder to do that, because you have fires that are coming in that you're trying to put out. You have walk-in tours, or you have a resident that needs you, and you cannot always live and breathe by your calendar. But I would say put it on there. I agree with Christy. Put that on there so that you at least are recognizing that, oh, I need to do this. Make it a task and make it a habit, right? I completely agree with that. Training is not one and done. Training needs to happen just like you would train continually on your CRM. Any tech stack needs constant training so it stays top of mind. And then, I think ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're working at the home office and you're implementing a tech stack, or you're using some form of new technology, create an internal army of champions. Find those users at the community level who are really good at either technology, or they're really good at picking up this new piece that you've implemented, because they then can be your champions, the go-to for those in the communities, their sister, brother communities that have questions. And it doesn't always have to rely on you as one person, because whether or not you realize it yet, you will be a bottleneck. When questions come to you and you're so busy at the home office, and I know that folks are busy in the community level too, it is nice to be able to rise up leaders in the communities, those that want some more responsibility and to grow in their careers, to give them the opportunity to run with a new technology piece or become the champion that can help their other communities. So it's a great opportunity for those inside the communities, and also will help those of you at the home office who are implementing tech stacks.
Thanks, Lacey. Julie, how about you wrap this one up for us?
Oh, agree 100% with Christy and Lacey. It little bit at a time when you're rolling it out. Either, if you're learning something new, just what do I need to know today? Being disciplined to go back. I'm learning a new technology, grow your occupancy, and I'm right in it. If you wait too long, but from the time you were shown something, which makes perfect sense. Oh yeah, this is, and you wait a week, forget it. You got to go right in there and do it. I would also say that from a partnership perspective, for technology, look for a partner that is a true partner. So what, from in my role as CSO, what's extraordinarily helpful is that partnership from the technology one day, for example, that, hey, let us please communicate with Vitality in this example, not just the trading piece, but the users who's using it, what are some of the results, maybe some folks who haven't quite adopted it yet, and that communicating with with me in this case helps me then understand who's not using it. And then it all comes back to the why, really helping, again, leading with empathy and curiosity. Why might there not be adoption? And that may be, there's multiple reasons, right? But that individual very oftentimes why in using it isn't built up enough.
Those are some words of wisdom, y'all. Thanks for sharing. Well, we're a little bit over time now, so let's land the plane real quick. So, and I won't say in one sentence, but maybe in a sentence with a lot of commas. What's your top advice on best ways to communicate, create transparency, and collaborate between your sales and marketing teams? Julie, we'll let you tee this one off.
You're asking one sentence.
With lots of commas.
Oh my gosh. I would say keeping it, I try really hard, keeping it simple. So in communicating, understand the end goal of the communication, keeping the benchmarks, expectations, and everything in mind. Try to keep emotion out of the communication in regard to, especially when we're maybe upset, or in the case of when the marketing material comes and it's not, your community's name isn't even on it. Very emotional, very upsetting, but trying to take a moment when we're not emotional in communicating, so that there's a greater empathy, greater alignment, and that we're leaning in with the assumption that everybody is in this for a positive intention.
Thanks, Julie. Christy, we'll let you go second here.
Okay, not one sentence, but quick. Be you. So be you, be real. People want someone who's real with them, right? And be fun and be silly, and don't be so intense and serious all the time. Lift people up. Everybody on our team has such heavy loads on their shoulders. It's our commitment as a support team, or as any leader, at the community or anywhere else, to lift people up. It's important. So that's my advice.
Love that, Chrissy. All right, Lacey.
All right, I'll close it out here. I will say one of my favorite books in business has been Crucial Conversations. And within Crucial Conversations, they talk a lot about understanding that we are all contributing to the pool of knowledge, which I've referenced before here on this call today. And I would say, remember that when you're talking with one another, be respectful in tone. Come with ideas, don't just come with complaints, and make sure that you understand everybody is really genuinely working for the same goal. We may need to correct our paths of how we're working to get there. And I love Julie's point about taking the emotions out of it, especially when it comes to sales and marketing. We are so passionate about what we do, and we work so hard, and we are giving all the time, right? It's an emotional business, what we do. And so to be able to step away and say, it's not a reflection on me personally, but there may need to be a shift in what my strategy looks like, or how I'm even communicating what that strategy looks like. And I think if we speak to one another with respect and understanding that we all are working towards the same pool of knowledge, we will get there.
Love it. Thank you, y'all. And I think we heard those calendar notifications in the background. I'm sure all of you have meetings in the next 10 minutes. So we're 5 minutes over time, but I wanted to thank you all for joining here today. A massive shout out to our awesome panelists for sharing their thoughts and insights. Thank you, Julie, Christy, and Lacey.
My pleasure.
Yes, like I said, we'll be sending out the recording this afternoon. So it'll be in your inbox by, I'd say, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. You can email me at Michael at one day if it's not there yet. But hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.